Hello, welcome to The Cheater's Diary, where we share raw, real-life stories filled with emotion and unexpected twists. If you enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to join us in spreading these meaningful tales. Now, let's dive into today's journey. I'm Matt, 35 years old. I used to live in a quiet suburb just outside Indianapolis, where life felt like it was on repeat. And I liked that. My life was like a book with predictable chapters, no surprises. I worked in logistics, not glamorous but steady, with a good paycheck that kept me and my wife, Julia, comfortable. Julia worked at a dental clinic. We'd been married for 6 years. No kids yet, but we were trying. That was the plan. We dreamed of kids, picking out names, imagining a little cabin in the mountains someday. That was my life. A good life, or so I thought. Every morning, Julia and I had our coffee ritual. She took hers black, no sugar. I needed a splash of cream. We'd sit across from each other in our small kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window, talking about small stuff, fixing the fence, plans for a movie night. Saturdays were for grocery runs, pushing the cart through the aisles, bickering over which pasta to buy. Fridays were takeout nights, usually pizza or Chinese. I still remember one evening, curled up on the couch, watching an old comedy. Julia laughed so hard she spilled popcorn all over the floor. I looked at her thinking, this is happiness. I held her hand in the car. She laughed at my terrible jokes. I thought we were solid. I really did. But then it all came crashing down because of one stupid text. One text I wasn't supposed to see. Julia's phone was on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, wasn't prying. It just lit up while I was pouring water. I glanced at it. A message from her boss. A heart emoji. A red heart. My heart stopped. I stood there, glass in hand, ice cold. Julia was in the next room, humming a song I didn't recognize. The world around me blurred, like someone drained the color from it. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a text. Maybe I misread it. Maybe it was her way of saying thanks for something at work. But deep down, I knew. A small voice in my head whispered the truth I wasn't ready to face. For hours, I paced the living room, trying to piece it together. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall, Julia in her white dress, beaming, me beside her, awkward but happy. That picture felt like a lie now. I tried to find a logical explanation, but I couldn't. I opened her phone. First time I'd ever done that. I saw the messages, not just one heart, a whole thread, words I never wanted to read. She'd sent photos. He replied with sweet talk. Words that should have been mine. I saved the conversations, took screenshots like I needed proof my life was falling apart. A few days later, I confronted Julia. I didn't yell, didn't break anything. I just asked, voice calm in a way that surprised me. Are you and your boss? She denied it, of course. Tears streaming, she called me paranoid, said I was making it up, but I had proof. I showed her the texts. Her face changed, from anger to panic, then finally confession. She admitted it had been going on for months, just physical, she insisted, as if that made it better. She said she still loved me, that she didn't mean for it to happen. Those words, I'd heard them in bad movies. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life. I couldn't stay in that house. That night, I drove off, stopping 2 blocks away. The streetlights cast a dim glow through the windshield, faint yellow flickers on the steering wheel. I sat there, gripping it, no idea where to go. I didn't cry, didn't scream, couldn't even think. Everything felt wrapped in thick fog. The world's sounds were muted. All I heard was my heartbeat, slow and heavy. The divorce was straightforward, at least legally. We sold the house. I let Julia keep most of the stuff, the couch we watched movies on, the dining table where we laughed. I didn't want any of it. Every item held a memory I wanted to erase. I took our savings, emergency fund, vacation fund, whatever you call it, and bought an old van. A 2008 Dodge Ram, white, rusted on one side, smelling of oil and old leather. It wasn't pretty, wasn't fancy, but it ran. More importantly, it felt like freedom. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not coworkers, not parents, not even my best friend. I packed a few clothes, a toolbox, a cooler, my favorite playlist, Indiana, and the scenery changed. Cornfields gave way to wide roads in Illinois, then Missouri. I rolled down the windows, let the wind hit my face. Phone on airplane mode. No calls, no texts, just me and the road. I stopped at a small campground near Mark Twain National Forest. It was cold, quiet, but beautiful. I cooked eggs on a camp stove, sat under a starry sky, wrapped in an old hoodie. I wondered what I was doing, why I was here, but for the first time in months, I felt a bit of peace. Not okay, but not numb anymore. It was a start. I left Indianapolis without looking back. The old van, with its faded white paint and rusty patches, became my new home. No plan, no GPS, no destination. Just the open road and a mix of freedom and pain. I played my favorite playlist, classic rock, blaring through a tiny Bluetooth speaker and drove. Indiana faded in the rear view, replaced by endless cornfields in Illinois, then winding roads in Missouri. I rolled down the windows, letting cold air whip my face, carrying the scent of dirt and dry grass. My phone stayed on airplane mode. No calls, no texts, just me, the road, and the mess in my head. That first day, I drove until dark. I pulled into a small campground near Mark Twain National Forest, just a few old picnic tables and a trickling stream nearby. No one around. I set up a tent but ended up sleeping in the van on an old mattress that smelled of leather and oil. I got out my camp stove, cooked 2 eggs. They burned a bit, but I ate them anyway, sitting on a log, staring at a sky full of stars. The smell of campfire smoke mixed with fresh pine, and for the first time in months, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in 3 hours. Not on purpose, but because I didn't want to. I pulled out an old college notebook, dusty in the corner of my bag, and wrote. Not a big diary entry, just random lines. Drove today. Don't know where I'm going. But here, under the stars, I feel a little lighter. I wasn't sure who I was writing for. Maybe myself. The next few days, I just kept driving. Some days I covered 200 miles, others just a few, stopping by a small lake or an empty field. I didn't check the clock, didn't track dates. Time became something foreign, like it didn't matter anymore. One afternoon, I pulled over by a river in Missouri. The water was clear, reflecting the sun like a shattered mirror. I sat on the bank, skipping stones, watching ripples spread and fade. I thought about Julia, our old house, the dinners we laughed through, but those memories felt distant, like they belonged to another Matt. I wasn't crying anymore, but my chest still felt heavy, like a rock was pressing on my heart. The road was doing something to me, not healing, not exactly, but it made me feel alive. I remember one night in Arkansas, parked on some public land where there wasn't a single city light. I lay on the van's roof, staring at stars like broken glass on a black canvas. I thought about what I'd lost, the house, the marriage, the dream of a family. But then another thought slipped in. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I wrote it in my notebook, under the faint glow of a flashlight. I don't know what I'm looking for, but for the first time, I don't feel like I need to know. Days passed, and I learned to live simply. I cooked on the camp stove, mostly eggs, canned beans, or whatever I grabbed at roadside stores. I washed dishes with water from a big plastic jug, dried them with an old rag. Once I stopped in a small Oklahoma town with just a general store and a gas station. The store owner, an older woman with a kind smile, asked where I was from. Everywhere, I said, and she laughed, like she got it. I bought instant coffee and a pack of crackers, then kept going. I didn't want to talk much, not because I was rude, but because I didn't have the energy for small talk. It felt fake, like a play I didn't want to act in. One morning, I woke up in the van, parked by a field in New Mexico. Sunlight poured through the window, hitting the old blanket I was wrapped in. I made coffee, sat in a folding chair, watched clouds drift across a deep blue sky. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Didn't think about her today, not because I forgot, but because I was too busy watching the clouds." That's when I realized I was changing. Not that I was over the pain. It was still there, like a faint shadow, but it wasn't blocking everything anymore. I started noticing small things, birds chirping at dawn, the smell of grass after rain, the slight vibration of the steering wheel under my hands. They reminded me I was still living, still moving forward, even if I didn't know how far I'd drive or when I'd stop. Maybe never, but every mile, every night under the stars, I felt further from the old me, the guy who thought a house, a job, a marriage was everything. I didn't know what I was searching for, but I knew I couldn't go back. Not now. Maybe never. This trip, this van, wasn't just a vehicle. It was an escape, a chance to find myself again, or at least a new version of Matt, one not defined by what I'd lost. I didn't know that just weeks later, this journey would change completely. Not because of the places I went, but because of someone I hadn't yet met. But that's a story for later. I'd been on the road about 2 weeks, drifting through Missouri, Arkansas, then cutting into New Mexico. No real plan, just following roads that looked good, stopping when the scenery made me want to. One late afternoon, I pulled into a small campground near Santa Fe, off the main highways, found on a crumpled paper map I'd bought at a gas station days earlier. The site was by a dry creek bed, with a few weathered picnic tables, some fire pits, and only one other van parked in the distance. The sun was setting, painting the sky in that golden-orange southwestern hue. The air was still, just a light breeze rustling the low hills. I parked, stepped out, stretched, my joints creaking after a long day of driving. I set up my folding chair, got out the camp stove, and started heating a can of beans with sausage, my usual simple dinner. My tiny Bluetooth speaker played a soft acoustic tune, blending into the quiet. I sat there, watching the fire crackle, thinking about how far I'd come in miles and in my head. Then, from the darkness, a voice came, soft but clear. "Sorry, don't mean to bother you, but mind if I join your campfire for a bit?" I turned. There she was, a few steps away. A heavy backpack slung over her shoulder, a hoodie tied around her waist, jeans dusted with road dirt. Her brown hair was tied up, a few strands loose across her forehead. She looked about 30, maybe a bit younger or older. Hard to tell. Her smile was slight, a little hesitant, but warm, genuine. No pretense, no makeup, no posed stance, just a real person, standing there, caught between the firelight and the dark. I blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah, sure, have a seat." She smiled, less shy this time, and dropped her pack with a relieved sigh. She pulled over my other folding chair, sat down, and held her hands near the fire to warm them. "Thanks for not being a creep," she said, half joking. I laughed, a real laugh, something I hadn't realized I'd missed. "I'm Emily," she said, holding out her hand. "Matt," I replied, shaking it. Her grip was firm, no hesitation, like she wasn't afraid, even out here in the middle of nowhere with a stranger. I shared some beans and sausage. She took it, eating without fuss. Natural. We started talking, easy stuff, no pressure. She told me she'd been laid off from her veterinary assistant job 2 months back. Her apartment lease ended soon after, and instead of finding a new place, she hit the road. Not out of recklessness, she said, but because she felt trapped. "I don't know what I'm looking for," she said, staring into the fire, but staying there, in that apartment, with bills and the same days over and over, it felt like I was dying. I nodded. I got that feeling, though I didn't share my story yet. She talked about hitchhiking. Most people were kind, but a few times were creepy. One night in Arkansas, a drunk guy tried to approach her tent, rambling nonsense. She packed up at midnight, walked 2 miles to a gas station for safety. "I'm not scared of being alone," she said, "but sometimes I just want a quiet night. No need to watch my back." Her words hit me, not because she seemed weak. She wasn't. But because I saw in her eyes a familiar tiredness, the kind you get when life's hurt you, but you keep going. We sat quietly for a bit, just the crackle of the fire and crickets in the distance. The sky darkened, stars starting to twinkle. She looked up, sighed. I miss the sound of nothing. No cars, no texts, no notifications. Just nothing. I nodded. "That's why I'm here." She smiled, didn't press, like she understood without needing more. Finally, she stood, stretched, pointed to a small tent a few yards away. "Thanks for letting me crash your fire. It helped more than you know." She paused, then said, voice hesitant, "Hey, crazy question. Where are you headed tomorrow?" I shrugged. "No clue. Probably west." She grinned, a mix of curiosity and boldness. "I don't have a plan either. If you're going west and you don't mind, can I tag along? Just to the next town." Really looked at her. Not just her face, but her... Someone so honest. It was almost disarming. No games, no ulterior motives in her eyes. Just straightforward, like she was betting her last bit of trust on a guy she just met. I thought about my days alone, the quiet nights, and realized part of me didn't want to be alone anymore. Not because I needed someone, but because something about her made me want to trust again. "Sure," I said. "I got room." Her smile lit up brighter than the fire. "Awesome. I'll handle breakfast." That night, I lay in the van, staring at the ceiling, firelight flickering through the window. I wasn't sure why I said yes. I'm not the type to open up easily, but something about Emily's smile, the way she talked, made me feel like she wasn't just a passerby. She was part of this journey, even if I didn't know where it was going. I closed my eyes, heard the wind through the hills, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming of the past. Next morning, the sun barely up, I heard a light tap on the van door. I slid it open, and there was Emily, holding 2 paper coffee cups from a gas station and a bag of egg sandwiches. Didn't know what you liked, so I got black coffee in these. They might suck, but it's all they had, she said, her smile bright as the morning. I took the coffee, its warmth spreading through my cold hands. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. She climbed into the passenger seat, natural as if she'd done it 100 times. No intrusion, just like she belonged. We started the van, and just like that, our journey together began. We headed west, no specific destination. First stop was a hill in Arizona, not a tourist spot, just a place where the sky was so beautiful you had to stop. We parked, climbed onto the van's roof, sat with coffee, watching clouds drift across a deep blue sky. Neither of us said much. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like we already understood each other. I started to see Emily wasn't the type to fill quiet with pointless chatter. She let moments speak for themselves. The next few days, we drove through Flagstaff, then down to Sedona, stopping on red dirt roads and campsites tucked in pine forests. We shared everything naturally. I cooked, usually beans or canned soup, and she teased me for my awful cooking skills. "You sure this is soup, or did you just boil dishwater?" she asked, winking, stirring a scorched pot on the camp stove. I laughed, and for the first time, it wasn't forced. It was real easy, like a cool breeze. One afternoon in Sedona, we stopped at a small town for supplies. The store clerk, an older woman with silver hair and a warm voice, watched us push our cart and smiled. "You two make a cute couple," she said like it was obvious. Emily blushed. I looked away, but inside, I didn't hate the idea. We didn't correct her, just smiled and kept shopping. Later in the van, Emily glanced at me, still a bit shy. She thought we were a couple, she said, half joking. I shrugged. Maybe she saw something we haven't. She laughed, her eyes lingering on me a little longer, like she was searching for something. We started opening up. One night in Utah, by a campfire, I talked about my old job. The morning meetings with fake smiles, endless spreadsheets, the feeling of being stuck in a loop. "You don't seem like a spreadsheet guy," Emily said, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not," I replied, but I was good at pretending I was. She nodded, like she knew what it was to wear a mask every day. Then she shared about her vet clinic job, naming rescue dogs like a shaggy one she called Muffin because it loved to curl up and sleep. She told me about a parrot that bit her, leaving a small scar on her hand. She held it up, pointing to a faint line in the firelight. 4 stitches, she said, smiling. But I still like that parrot. Moments like that made me feel closer to her, not because we said anything profound, but because of the little things. She sang along to the radio when the signal faded, making up lyrics to old songs. "Highway, oh highway, take us where no one's waiting," she sang. Off-key, but full of life. I laughed, shook my head. "Stick to vet work, not singing." She pretended to be mad, threw a plastic spoon at me, and we laughed until the folding chairs shook. Once, in Nevada, the van's tire went flat. We pulled over under blazing sun, changed it together. Emily held the wheel. I tightened bolts, sweat dripping down our faces. When we finished, she raised her hand for a high five, like we'd just conquered something huge. "Best pit crew ever," she declared, and I laughed, feeling like we really were a team. Those moments, small as they were, showed me I was smiling more. Not forced, but real smiles. Under a starry sky, I opened up more. We sat by the fire, cold wind rustling the pines. I stared into the flames, and the words just came. "I was married," I said, voice low. Emily didn't interrupt, just looked at me, waiting. She cheated with her boss, said she still loved me, said it was just physical. But no one does that by accident, right? The fire crackled, like it agreed. Emily nodded slightly. No one does that by accident. I went on about how I thought we were solid, how I'd planned our future, a house, kids, a life. I was planning for us while she was tearing it apart. My voice faded, like the flames were swallowing my words. Emily stayed quiet for a moment, then spoke, soft but steady. "I'm sorry, Matt, really." There was no pity in her voice, just understanding. Then she shared her story. "I had a job I thought was everything, built my whole life around it. Then one day they said, 'We're going a different direction,' and I was out. No warning. I didn't see it coming." She looked into the fire, eyes distant. "The worst part wasn't losing the job or the apartment. It was the silence after, when everything's gone and it's just you." I nodded. "Yeah, that's the part." We sat there, saying nothing, just the fire and the wind. Something shifted in me that night. Not that I forgot the past, but I started to feel I could live with it. Emily, too. We weren't trying to fix each other, weren't trying to make things perfect. We were just there, together, and that was enough to make me feel alive again. The weeks that followed felt like a dream. We drove roads with no cell signal, cooked on the camp stove, washed clothes in rivers. We sang along to old country tunes, danced clumsily at a gas station with an outdoor speaker. She made everything an adventure, from grocery runs to sitting in traffic. And me, I started smiling, not because I was trying, but because she made me want to. We'd traveled through Arizona, Nevada, up to Oregon. Days passed fast, but slow enough to feel every moment. One Sunday morning, cold and damp, we pulled into a campground near Lake Shasta in Northern California. Not the prettiest place we'd seen, but it had a piece to it, like the end of a chapter. Tall trees lined the lake, distant mountains blurred in the fog, and the air was still, just the soft rustle of wind through leaves. I drove slower than usual, not because of bad roads or traffic, but because something deep inside didn't want this trip to end. We set up camp, like always. Emily gathered firewood. I started the fire. We shared the last can of beans from a grocery run 3 days back, eating straight from the pot on the camp stove. She laughed when I spilled some on my shirt, teasing that I needed a bib like a kid. I pretended to be annoyed, tossed a stick at her, and we laughed, our voices echoing in the quiet. After dinner, we sat by the fire, its orange glow lighting her face. But that night, something felt different. Not tense, but heavy, like we both knew something big was coming. Emily picked up a stick, poked at the embers, then spoke, voice low. "I think this might be my last stop." I looked at her, unsure what she meant. She looked up, her eyes soft but resolute. "I mean, I didn't have a plan when I started this trip. I just wanted to find myself. But now, I feel like I need to stop, pick a direction, make a plan." I nodded slowly, her words hitting something in me. "I've been thinking the same," I said. "I started this trip to run away. But since it's not about running anymore." She smiled, a mix of sadness and joy. "That's the beautiful part. But it's scary too, right? When you realize you can't just keep drifting." We sat in silence, just the fire crackling and the wind through the pines. Then she spoke, voice soft as a whisper, but enough to stop my heart for a beat. "I've never felt more real than I do with you. I've met people who made me feel smaller, quieter, less like me. But with you, I'm just me. No pretending." I looked at her, the fire dancing in her eyes, and I felt the same. "Me too," I said, voice rough. "I thought my old life, the house, the job, the marriage, was everything. But sitting here, with you, eating canned beans, and listening to crickets, it feels more real than anything I've ever had." She laughed softly, whispered, "Beans are the key to my heart." Then she got serious, her eyes locking onto mine. "What if we didn't overthink it? What if we just decided something right now together?" I looked at her, heart racing. "What do you mean?" She took a breath, then said, voice steady but full of feeling, "Marry me." I blinked, shocked, not from fear, but because it suddenly felt so right, scarily right. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how to react. "You serious?" She nodded, her smile brighter than the fire. "As serious as sitting by this fire," then fell silent. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd climbed into my van with a backpack and a smile, who'd changed everything I thought about people and life. Something clicked in me, like a door opening. "Okay," I said, "let's do it." Her smile grew bigger than any I'd seen. "You're not just saying that because you're tired of driving alone, right?" "No," I replied. "I'm saying it because, for the first time in a long time, I know exactly who I want to be with." We didn't hug, didn't kiss, just sat there, watching the fire, quietly deciding something bigger than both of us. Next morning, we drove to the nearest town, found a courthouse. The clerk said it'd take 2 days for a marriage license, so we stayed in a roadside motel, ate bad Chinese takeout, watched TV on a creaky bed. We walked around the town, bought nothing, said little. It wasn't movie-style romance, no flowers, no candles, just us being there, and that made it right. On our wedding day, we stood before a sleepy courthouse clerk in a beige room, wearing jeans and sneakers. No guests, no flowers, just us. I looked at Emily, her hair messy, her smile as bright as the day we met. We said, "I do," and that was it. No champagne, no social media posts. We left the courthouse, sat in the van under a big oak tree, quiet. Emily leaned her head against the window, looking out at the small-town street. I gripped the steering wheel, took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt steady, no doubts, no fears. "So, husband," she said, voice teasing. "Where to now?" I looked at her, smiled. "Anywhere you want." We drove north, toward the Oregon coast. Emily had said she'd dreamed of walking barefoot on Cannon Beach since she was a kid, after seeing a picture in a book. "Then today's the day," I said. The van rattled along, and I worried it might break down, but Emily just laughed. "Don't jinx it, we're almost there." We reached the beach in the late afternoon. Fog thick, colder than we expected, but it was beautiful with rugged cliffs and crashing waves. Emily kicked off her shoes, ran to the shore, her jacket flapping in the wind. I stood back watching her, feeling like I was seeing a living painting. She stood there, barefoot in the sand, arms spread like she was embracing the ocean. I walked up, took her hand. Her hand was cold but warm in mine. "I promised myself I'd get here," she said. "And now I'm here, with you." I squeezed her hand, said nothing, but it felt like the world was exactly where it should be. We stayed near the coast for weeks, picking up odd jobs. Emily sold honey at a farmer's market. I fixed fences and cleaned garages for locals. Then we found a small cabin in the woods, not far from the sea. An older couple rented it out, no Wi-Fi, just a fireplace and the distant sound of waves. We took it, then bought it when they moved away. We planted a garden, bought secondhand furniture, made it home. One morning, about a year after we met, I woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of waves through the window. Emily was in the kitchen, hair a mess, wearing my old t-shirt, humming softly. She looked at me, smiled. "You know, this is when I'm happiest." I walked over, wrapped my arms around her from behind, kissed the back of her neck. We didn't need big plans, no 5-year timelines. We had each other, and after everything, that was enough.